Okay, Senator. I guess long story short, what are you up to these days?
Well, I, along with 10 of my Senate Republican colleagues, have denied a quorum to the Oregon State Senate over a bill uh, on a carbon tax. It's House Bill 2020. And we just believe that this bill is too complicated and too expensive and will cost the jobs of our constituents in manufacturing and in timber and agriculture. And the majority Democrats have not listened to our concerns or our constituents' concerns, and we're not planning on going back until those concerns are addressed and that our constituents are heard and respected.
It's my understanding that on June 31st, the session expires in Oregon, and from there, all the bills that are still on the table would die. Is there like a day circled on the calendar where you would be willing to go back to the Capitol and start conversations again?
Well, I mean, there are several things that I could bring us back to the Capitol. June 30th at midnight is when the clock runs out on this particular session. We've said before we even left, we said that we'd be willing to suspend the rules to work on budget bills and pass budget bills. There's 39 budget bills left to pass during that time. And we would certainly like to have a bipartisan, bicameral agreement on this carbon bill because we believe that carbon dioxide emissions need to be reduced. We just think this is a very complicated and expensive way to do it that's going to cost people their livelihood and their jobs, and we don't want to see that happen.
I spoke with businesses across Eastern Oregon yesterday in trucking and logging, and they say from their understanding, if this went through, their small businesses would either have to go out of business or move to a state like Idaho to continue. Is it that dramatic?
Well, what this bill will ultimately do is actually initially, when it goes into effect in 2021, it'll raise gas taxes 22 cents a gallon. It'll raise natural gas for home heating up to 50%, and it will cost many people in manufacturing their jobs because people aren't going to come to Oregon if they know that they're not going to be competitive in the national marketplace or in the international marketplace, which is what a lot of our ag products are in those venues.
What's your day look like today? Are you on the phone in contact with Democrats trying to negotiate something, I guess, remotely?
Well, unfortunately, I'm on the phone mostly with reporters these days. So, yes, I am talking to colleagues on occasion and staff people. And so I am available to do whatever I can to make sure we bring this to an end. But we want it to end in a bipartisan agreement, not in us providing a quorum. So Multnomah County voices are heard, and their agenda is the only one that is getting passed.
Are you? I guess is it? I guess is this the last resort for you and the Republicans? Is this something that this is the final thing you could do?
Well, it is the last resort. And this bill is so significant. It is such a change in Oregon's economy. We're a small state. Really, what this bill is it's good for California because what it does is it provides more carbon credits for them to go ahead and buy. And we've heard rumors that the governor of California is calling Democrat legislators, asking them to vote for it, because it's not just us who don't want to vote for it. There's some Democratic senators who don't want to vote for it either and want changes to this bill. And the only way we feel like we can bring this about is a last resort, which this is a protest. It's a political protest. It's been used by Democrats before. We didn't invent it, but we sure are going to use whatever means necessary at our disposal to try to get our constituents' voices heard and respected.
Has any progress been made since yesterday?
Progress is elusive at this point, but I think talks are continuing, and the most important thing is that both parties are open to continuing to talk and to try to resolve it.
There's a report on CNN today. I think it was Senator Boquist's wife says that you guys are in the Idaho area. Can you comment on that?
I believe that there are senators in multiple states. I've been in 3 states in 3 days. So I can tell you that I'm confident there are people in Idaho, but how many, I'm not sure. But I do know that there are multiple states where senators currently are. I can tell you that I don't believe there are any senators currently in Oregon.
Governor Brown said something to the effect of, for every day of the session you miss, there'll be a $500 fine. Of course, the Oregon State Police are searching for senators. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, the way they've brought about these fines, we believe, is unlawful, so we will sue them. And as it relates to the state police, I did have a call from the superintendent of the Oregon State Police. He was very firm and very polite and requested my presence back at the Capitol. I let him know that I respected the men and women in uniform and the job that they have to do, but I was going to decline his invitation at this time to return to the Capitol. So we had a nice exchange, and I think we both understand each other, and I'm sure he is having similar conversations with other senators.
If a senator was still in Oregon, I guess, what are the rules of engagement, so to speak? Would you be arrested?
Well, they would certainly ask you to come back to the Capitol, but the question really remains, would essentially force by arrest be used in that situation? And, I find it interesting that there's all kinds of political protests in the city of Portland, many of which become violent. The police stand on the sidelines and do nothing, yet when there is a political disagreement, the first thing that is done is they levy fines more than what these protesters have faced, and they threaten the arrest of their political opponents. That does not sound like the America I know.
I've seen a lot of talk on social media in the Portland and Oregon area saying that, the senators, the MIA, they're using taxpayer dollars. They should be at work. Conversely, though, I spoke with people across Eastern Oregon yesterday that say they support you in what you're doing and that they're happy that their tax dollars are being spent for senators to be out of the state. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, the best way for us to represent our constituents at this time is to bring attention to this issue. And the only way to bring attention to this is to deny a quorum and give the time for people to get the word out about what this bill really does. I had a poll done in my district just a couple days ago, and when people are told that it's going to be an increase of 22 cents a gallon and that their home heating bill is going to go up by 50%, both of which are completely true, and that likely thousands of people will lose their jobs in manufacturing, over 2/3 of my district, which is the city of Bend, Redmond, Tumalo, and Sun River, are opposed to this bill. Only 18% support it. And so once people find out what this bill really does, as opposed to the talking points, they are opposing this bill. And so we want to make sure that we give people time to be able to understand what's actually going on.
Has Governor Brown reached out to you personally to talk?
She did try to call me Wednesday night. I was in the mountains and didn't get her call until I was out of the mountains. I called her back, and she did not answer. So I'm confident at some point we will talk. But if I can be helpful in any way, I stand ready to do so. And I've on the last walkout, I was the only Republican that stayed because I thought I could be useful in making sure that people understood what our position was on the issue of the day, which that was a gross receipts tax and some other issues. And we were able to resolve that one within about a week. So hopefully we can do that here as well.
If Governor Brown's watching our report tonight, what would you want to say to her?
Well, I would say, Governor, do everything you can to reach out to Republicans and bring this to a bipartisan close. And I would suggest that she retract the fines in the state police, because I don't think ultimately that's productive, and I don't think it really shows goodwill in trying to reach consensus and compromise here, which is really what is needed.
It's my understanding that only 2 Republicans are needed to reach a quorum. Are you confident that all the Republicans will stay out of the state of Oregon and 2 won't slip back in?
Well, at this point, I believe there are no Republicans in the state of Oregon, and so I know that our members don't plan to go back until this is resolved. So I'm as confident as I can be, other than the fact that the governor clearly has the state police out trying to work and bring us back.
For you and the Republicans, what does a compromise or a middle ground look like on the cap and trade?
Well, I'll tell you what, our constituents, one of the number one things in terms of carbon emissions is forest fires in eastern, southern, and central Oregon. And we want to see more targeted resources at making our forests as healthy as they can be and stopping these massive forest fires and wildfires that now seem to be an annual occurrence, where maybe it was a couple times a decade in years past. And so the carbon emissions from forest fires are a significant part of carbon emissions in our districts. And so we want to make sure that that is part of this bill. And the other issue is that you don't need a complicated and expensive essentially carbon credit scheme in order to lower emissions in Oregon. And you can do that through essentially positively trying to move constituents to electric and hybrid vehicles, and doing that through a tax credit process versus a very complicated and highly suspect in terms of being constitutional in this particular bill that we have today.
What's next for you? What happens from here?
Well, we're going to continue to watch, listen, wait, and do what we can to try to bring this to a close. But again, we stand ready to go in and vote on budget bills. We've said that we would do that, but as it relates to the carbon bill, we really feel like that we need some sort of consensus and compromise in a bipartisan, bicameral way.
How long are you willing to stay out of your home state?
Well, I can tell you that I'm certainly prepared to go to June 30th, and the governor said she'd call us back in special session, and I think whether we show up for that session will depend on what is going to be discussed at that session. So I am hopeful that we will be able to get this resolved, but there's going to be a lot of discussions that need to take place between now and then.
Realistically, how quickly do you think you and the Republicans could get back to the State House, or the Capitol as you guys call it, for a compromise?
I think most people are going to need 24-hour notice. People ask where we are, and I would just say that it is highly likely that there are no Senate Republicans in Oregon, but likely are in many western states.
All right. Senator, anything else you want to let your constituents know?
No, not at this time. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Very good. Thank
you. Have a good one. Bye.